Welcome to Beyond Bitcoin, a podcast about all things digital assets, the global communities they are creating, the generations that are using and investing in them, and the challenges faced by the nations that are seeking to regulate them. The content of this program is not to be taken as investment advice. The opinions expressed in the program by the host and the guests are their personal opinions only. Remember, feel free to subscribe and share with like-minded friends. My name is Deryck. I'm the CEO of Portal Asset Management, and my co-host is Nitin Gaur, Managing Director of State Street Digital Assets. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome along to another episode of Beyond Bitcoin. My name is Deryck, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, as normal, Nitin Gaur. Hello, Nitin.
Hey, Deryck. Glad to be here and looking forward to this. I think we have a guest today.
We certainly do have a guest today. So Ben Rose has joined us today, which is great. Ben Rose is the Regional General Manager for Binance in Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific Islands. So hello, Ben. Thanks for coming along.
G'day guys, thanks for having me.
So maybe let's start. I mean, Binance is such a leader in this field. It's the biggest exchange in the world for a large period of time. It's always in the press and the newspaper, but it also sets a lot of the scene of what's happening in the marketplace. Maybe give a bit of a background of yourself and how you arrived to Binance Australia, and then let's have a bit of a chat about the marketplace and your investors.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my journey with Binance early in 2022 as the first employee in New Zealand. So I started up the business over there, got the exchange registered and built the team, built the customer base, and then earlier this year, in about March, took over the broader ANZ region. So now lucky enough to manage the teams in New Zealand, in Australia, looking after customers in both countries and also in the Pacific Islands region.
Yes, of course, New Zealand's just another offshoot of Australia, of course. It's the same country.
How very dare you.
So Binance,
Sure.
of course, is now, like we are, starting to see the green shoots of this bull market return. And what comes with that, of course, is the exuberance of investing into the marketplace and then hopefully a higher level of knowledge base that's occurring in it. And so you guys, of course, are playing an active role in bringing new investors into the space, but at the same time suggesting those investors, learn about the space, enter the space carefully, invest wisely. What sort of guidelines are you putting in place to be able to assist investors doing that?
Yeah, so look, I think the approach that we take is the approach we take irrespective of whether it's a bear or a bull market. So the focus for us is always about growing adoption, and adoption grows with educational awareness. And the price of the major coins doesn't hurt. People often FOMO in when prices spike, but for us, education really is where everything starts. So we did some research actually a couple of months ago, and our customers and non-crypto customers told us the main barrier to entry into the market is that lack of understanding and education. Yeah. So we focus all of our efforts into a thing called Binance Academy, which is it's pretty much free content, 30 different languages, all different levels, from the very basic what is a token, what is a coin, what is a wallet, what's a cold wallet, what's a hot wallet, all the way up through the levels to very complex trading strategies. And we do courses through that, because one of the challenges, as you know, is there's no lack of information out there. It's just a question of knowing where to go and what the objective good educational content is. So we've sort of set that up as a separate part of our business, not linked to selling trading specials or anything like that. It's really just about education. So that's all there online, and then we get out there and we work with universities. And we were in WA recently, in Sydney. We're going to the Gold Coast soon, and Melbourne. So we get out there and speak to students and others at universities, purely educating them on what this stuff is, how it works, why some people find it helpful, what are the things to watch out for. And a lot of that is how to manage risk in the space too. It's new for everybody, and with anything new, there are opportunities, but of course there are risks. So that's a large part of that is educating people on how to safely engage in the space before they come in, but also once they're on our platform, we make sure that we're ensuring people understand exactly what it is that they're doing, the risks and the opportunities, all of that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it really is kind of where everything starts for us.
Very much so. And tell me, these courses, are they run at certain periods? Are they video courses? Are they free? Or are they different levels? Tell me about that, because it's very important for education. It's what we do all the time. It's what Nitin and I sit here and both learn ourselves and share with others.
Totally. So yeah, look, it's all free. It's all free and it's all online, just like crypto, 24/7. We do scholarships and university courses as well, which are more, term based. But the Binance Academy content is always there, and it's always growing. So yeah, like I say, 30 different languages, and we're always adding to the content and asking users what they want to see more of, less of. So it's a constantly evolving beast. Started off in one language, and it's just grown and grown and grown.
Yeah. So one thing on this, Ben, is, as you're educating your consumer base, which, is growing on a daily basis, as we all know, how does Binance Australia and, the region, how do you foster user engagement, community building amongst its consumers and customers? And are any of these initiatives in place that gather user feedback and act upon it? In the sense that there's this whole cyclical element, there's the industry itself is very ephemeral. Things change on an hourly basis. How do you deal with that and keep up with not just education, but also user engagement, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a lot of users across the region, about 1 million in Australia, about 300,000 in New Zealand. And so obviously online is one of the major ways we communicate with them, whether it's through our customer service team or social media. And we're very active on all of the different social media channels with kind of fostering that sense of community and getting feedback from them both ways. But we do a lot of in-person events too. So we have a schedule of user meetups all around the country. They're always happening, where we'll talk about key themes, I suppose, in Binance, but also in crypto more broadly. We use those as a key source of feedback too, and then so we feed all of that feedback that comes in locally through to our global team. And if you have a look on X and you look up the hashtag Binance Build, you'll see that every single week there's a new feature or enhancement released on the Binance platform, and that's all based off user feedback. So it's user feedback and user experience is a really live, ongoing conversation for us, because that's our business, right? Is making sure that our users are getting what they want and they're engaged. And so, yeah, that's probably the output that you'll see of that. But yeah,
what's the
social
size
media,
of Binance? Give us
user
some
events
metrics of it on a global basis.
key.
Ben, can you give us some metrics on the size of Binance worldwide? Maybe the number of customers, its turnover, its capitalization, something to give us an understanding, and also where it sits amongst the other major exchanges of the world.
Yeah, no worries. So we've got about 150 million users around the world, and in terms of market share, we're depending on the month, we're anywhere between 40 and 50% of overall trading volume. Wow. So we're definitely the biggest by trading volume, and which is great, and it's a big number. But having said that, we're at such an early stage of the industry that that's a large market share of quite a small pie, and so our focus is really on growing that pie, growing adoption. So if you think about Australia, where there was a survey the ASX did recently, which said about a third of Australians have or have had some form of crypto. Well, that's 2/3 that don't, and the numbers are similar around the world. So there's a huge upside as and we're starting to see some of that institutional interest coming in around the world, and we'll go from that market cap of 1 trillion to goodness knows how much. We want to see that overall pie, the overall market growing, and of course we'd like to maintain the leading share within it too.
Yeah. And so Ben, can you, expanding on that in terms of markets and in terms of partnerships and collaborations, is Binance Australia actively seeking partnerships with the local financial institutions, blockchain startup companies, for instance, or any of the existing traditional finance market participants to strengthen its position? As we've seen around the world, that the Coinbase of the world are going after institutional investors, or many of your exchanges and competitors are heading in that direction. Love to get your perspective. And also, can you share any plans to introduce new products or features tailored in local markets, which, again, I've always found that finance is very contextual in nature, both in terms of regulatory elements, but also in terms of the thesis and the sentiments of the local community. Love to get your perspective on that, Ben, as you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, in terms of partnerships, so the traditional financial industry, absolutely, we look to engage with them. So we do that as part of Blockchain Australia with the fantastic team there, but we also do that independently. And so, we're talking to most of the major banks about accessing on-ramp and off-ramp for our users,
Right.
which we currently don't have. And those are discussions that lots of exchanges are having with them too. And I think part of that discussion is the sort of evolving regulatory landscape in Australia. So, we're part of discussions with the banks,
Yeah.
with the industry bodies. So that's a sort of evolving discussion. In terms of local fintechs, we invest in quite a lot of blockchain startups globally. We've got a venture capital arm called Binance Labs, which I believe is the world's biggest blockchain investor by market cap. We've got about $7 billion US dollars funds under investment at the moment. So we're always having conversations with businesses around the world, including some currently in Australia, about investment, about partnerships. And so, I can't make any announcements specifically now because those are still in discussion, but there certainly will be some around the world, and certainly will be some in Australia coming soon. Yeah.
And one follow on that, right? How does Binance Australia and Oceania view collaboration as a means to address regulatory challenges and enhance its offerings? Because at many level, and this is a global sort of landscape around regulatory and compliance sort of frameworks where they are trying, when I say they, I mean the entire college of regulators around the world are trying to apply the same rules of engagement for crypto as they have done for traditional finance. But of course, it's a different asset class which has different sort of rules of engagement, different technology. Love to get your perspective is some of the collaboration that you talk about, besides the on-ramp, off-ramp, which I think is necessary for the broader participation. Are you viewing some of this collaboration as one way to address regulatory challenges and enhance your offerings to say it's going to be mainstream? I'd love to get your perspective of if you can share some nuggets around that.
Yeah, sure. So you'll know right now we're in the consultation phase for regulation in Australia, which is fantastic. As an industry, we've been calling for it and waiting for it. So we're deep in the details right now of the consultation that Treasury's put out. That closes in December, and then we're looking at that being introduced in 2024. So that's great because, like all jurisdictions around the world, that hadn't yet set out their positions, there wasn't that clarity for players in the market. But we're not the only player in the market. And so the discussions with the likes of Treasury, Austrac, ASIC, the Reserve Bank have been had by us individually, but also by others in the market collectively. So I mentioned earlier the industry body Blockchain Australia. That's a really great way that all of the different players have come together to engage with the banking industry, with regulators. And I have to say, in Australia, the regulators are very open to dialogue. With industry, and that's so in terms of participation, we've done that, and you just wouldn't achieve that unilaterally as an individual organisation because the discussions come with the weight of all of those players around the table. Yeah. So that's probably I think partnership is the key way we've engaged with regulators there. Next year is going to be a big year for us as an industry, and I think it's exciting for. It's exciting for Australians, it's exciting for exchanges, but also I think it will be interesting to see what licensing brings to that relationship between the banking sector and exchanges, because the banking sector itself is starting to get into the blockchain space now. We've seen some really interesting pilots over the last year or so between some of the big banks and regulators in Australia. So I think this is an evolving space that won't just be about exchanges anymore. It's going to be about the traditional financial industry and how it engages. So I think it's great that we'll all be on a sort of level playing field in terms of licensing.
Sure.
And it's particularly good to see that the industry is having an opportunity to speak as a whole and have input. There's a certain pang in me that says I'm actually quite proud of what Australia's legislators are doing, because I'm seeing some pretty appalling legislation getting touted in some countries around the world. We know who they are. We know who you are, as the saying goes. And And so what we're seeing is not a bipartisan approach. We are seeing a bipartisan approach to this in Australia. Both parties are interested in providing regulations that make sense here. There's not a lot of fight between the two of them. And we're seeing, these new regulations relating, the proposed platform that came out relating to digital assets in October this year. It just makes common sense. They're talking about having an AFSL provided to the main exchanges. They're talking about some aspects of the existing financial regulations being imposed, which just makes sense. And they're actually turning around and saying, we acknowledge that other aspects, certain digital activities, have additional obligations, they say, to be able to set regulation around those. Things like tokenization, staking, and network validation. Things like these are different to traditional industry. And the regulations are looking at how to cope with those and how to build them. So personally, it looks very positive on the outset. You feel the same?
Yeah, I do. I think what's become really interesting over the last 18 months or so is we've seen jurisdictions around the world coming out with their regimes. If you think about, started off with VARA, but then you look at MiCA in Europe. So jurisdictions are coming out with frameworks which give operators and their customers clarity. And interestingly, that then puts pressure on regulators in other markets to come to the party and come out with what's right for their country, because this is an international industry. And so I think this is a big opportunity for Australia to be one of the leaders. And conversely, having, if they weren't to do it, would have been a risk of being left behind. So I think it's great that they're doing it. The devil's always in the detail, but we've been, as an industry, calling for it. The Treasury have responded, and we'll see what that looks like next year. But early signs are pretty positive.
Yeah. So one thing, Ben, again, thanks. This is fascinating, and just a question on risk and security practices, right? There's something which I've been focused on as a technologist, both in terms of the requirements from various regulatory and compliance bodies around the world to say, hey, there are security practices and technologies. So I'd love to understand what are those that is employed by Binance Australia to safeguard customer assets and maintain that integrity of its platform, which I think, being one of the most dominant platforms, global platforms, one, is Binance Australia different from the rest of the world, or you have a unifying standard that you apply and then you have a flavor of the local requirement, because all these are very contextual, both from expectation from the masses. And second thing is, how often does Binance Australia, and I would say, Australia and New Zealand, as a company, conduct security audits and assessment, which I would imagine will be a requirement, as it is in the United States, as I work with the industry. Love to understand that dynamic as you deal with it. And is that a cost imperative for you?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So the way we operate, which is how all of our markets operate, and similar to lots of global tech companies, is we will have global centers of excellence for economy of scale purposes, but then locally we'll have accountable individuals. So in Australia, we've got in our compliance team, we've got a compliance manager who actually is ex-regulator herself. We've got a money laundering reporting officer who is actually ex-banking, and over the top of those, we've got a regional director who is also ex-banking. So they're supported by a number of others locally. Their job, and we've also got a local regulatory lawyer. So their job is to take what our global teams do and make sure that we add on top of that any specific local requirements, so that we're compliant to, requirements from the likes of AUSTRAC, for example. So we start off, whenever we establish a local business, we start off with the local regulations and what's required. Then we look at what's available from our global business and see where the gaps might be that we need to add on to locally. So those are, specific requirements around, might be proof of address might be required under AML laws in one country but not another, or whatever that might be. So that's how we do that. We have regular audits, internal and external, across all different aspects of what we do. We share those with regulators, as most financial service organisations do. And the local compliance team are the accountable people for that. So while we might have colleagues in another country executing some controls, the oversight of those controls all sits with the local team who are accountable to the local regulator. So that's pretty much how it works. And we have the same structure in New Zealand as well, where the laws are similar but slightly different. And the same applies to our product sets available in each market. So obviously, definitions and allowable products under an AML registration in one country might be different in another country where you might need a securities license, for example. So that's something else that differs country to country, and it's all based on the local requirements. So in Australia, the main agencies that we would work with would be Austrac, who we're registered with, obviously the ATO. We work closely with the AFP, and we're as everyone does, we report suspicious transactions and those sorts of things. But we actually do some quite cool stuff where we bring our law enforcement team over from overseas, and we've held workshops in person with the AFP and the ATO, helping them understand and upskill in terms of tracing and tracking transactions in their sort of law enforcement divisions. So yeah, we work pretty closely with those guys.
Well, it certainly shows you as a solid citizen here. And people look at the Binance exchange and the Binance capabilities as being something very impressive. I mean, really, your application, the services that you provide are, exceptionally impressive. They really are sort of large industry standard best of practice. But I'm really surprised about how you as an organisation are challenged with on-ramps and on-ramps, with off-ramps, with banking. It seems to me that particularly Binance, which is large and capable, shouldn't be challenged with on-ramps and off-ramps with banking. What do you think's happening there, Ben?
I think there's a couple of things. I think we've probably evolved and matured as an organisation locally. So, those people I spoke about who are ex-banking, I've hired those and brought those people into the team deliberately so that we have more depth in our sort of, understanding of operating within a regulatory framework. So, probably that's one thing that's happened is we have evolved over the years. I think the other one is the lack of regulatory clarity has posed a challenge for some in the traditional finance sector who want to do the right thing and they're trying to mitigate risk. There is risk with something that's new. And then there of course are also competitive pressures as well. So I think the combination of all of those three things, which look is not unique to Australia, right? It's we're seeing that globally. As we grow and mature as an organisation, as the TradFi industry gets into blockchain and crypto and more comfortable with it, and as the regulations emerge, I think we should end up with a happier coexistence.
And so for those that are actually trading on Binance in Australia, can you advise how do they currently on-ramp and off-ramp into Binance and do their trades on the Binance exchange and services here?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of fiat on-ramping, crypto on-ramping is really easy, obviously. Mm-hmm. In terms of fiat on-ramping, we've got, you can go on and off via card, but also we've got a P2P marketplace that lots of people use as well. And then on top of that, we've got some third parties on our platform who offer Pay ID transfers as well. So Banksa would be an example. So there are a few different ways. Is it as smooth as I would like? Absolutely not. Are we working hard on making it smoother? Yes, we are. But those would probably be the main ways at the moment.
And Ben, can you touch upon risk management as a technologist and as someone who's focused solely on technology design? I oftentimes interface more with risk managers and looking into model risk management of a large financial institution, and I think Binance would qualify as a financial institution of sorts. Is how does Binance, from a Australia New Zealand perspective, assess and manage risks that's related to volatile nature of cryptocurrency markets? And can you also elaborate on companies' risk management framework and procedures? I believe there were some global initiatives taken in terms of reducing the float and margin trading and so on and so forth. But love to get if there's more refinement in terms of, given the fact that crypto markets are notorious for being volatile and being notorious for being taken advantage of. So I'd love to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we don't need to go into too much detail about internal operations because it's a private business. But what I would say is I'm ex-banking, and the processes and practices we have are very, very familiar. So we have at a local, regional and global level all of the sorts of operational risk governance frameworks that you would expect. We've, of course, that one of the great things about building a digital trading platform from scratch is that you're not beholden to any legacy issues. You can build it the right way from the very beginning. So in terms of transaction monitoring and velocity monitoring, all of those sorts of things, we build that into the platform, which is great. But then we overlay on top of that our compliance resource and our law enforcement team. So about a quarter of all of our staff are purely focused on risk and compliance. And it really is the vast majority of activity that happens inside the business. There's that, and there's sales and marketing, and it is everything for us, because look, as I said before, we're a 6-year-old business. We've grown to this scale because people trust us with their assets and trust us to do the right thing. And so, that's it's key to us. It's really key. And I think one of the the very first things we did was set up the SAFU fund as an insurance fund. But that's one of the more visible things we've done. Day to day, we are consistently looking at all of our activities, looking at all of our customers, looking at all the transactions and monitoring those to make sure that we are, as much as we can, mitigating risk. It's probably as detailed as I can be, I'm afraid.
No, I think it's very helpful, and I actually, it's admirable, Ben, that if you're dedicating 1/4 of your staff in terms of doing the risk management, I think that's commendable, because I think that only protects the end consumer, right, and Binance as a company. So I appreciate the response, for sure. Deryck, over to you.
And so also Binance, you're talking about investing in the future, and you're one of the largest investors. You're saying the largest investor in this space. What sort of future products are you focusing on now, and what do you see might evolve with the likes of Web 3.0 rationale of thinking and rationale of operations? And are you leaning into Web 3.0 as a primary area for you?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So today, the main part of our business is a crypto trading platform. It's obviously a centralized exchange, but we treat our business as an ecosystem, and so we also have we've got a whole range of investments into decentralized technologies as well. We run, Trust Wallet as an example. There are lots of parts of our business, and the way that we approach investment is we place strategic bets. So while we know that today a centralized exchange is where people feel comfortable because it's an easy way to get into crypto because it has a username and a password, we also see that, as people get more comfortable, they might choose to start to self-custody a portion of their crypto as well. So we take a real portfolio approach. So if you look across the Binance Labs investments, they're really quite varied. And we also do a lot of work in terms of charity and education. So it's very, very spread. So as I say, today, the major part of our business is a cryptocurrency exchange. It probably won't be in the future, but frankly, we don't know where that might be. We get led there by our users. So when we set up a crypto-only exchange 6 years ago, we had no idea that it would end up being kind of where it is today. And I think anybody who says that they can predict where Web3 is going is probably wrong. I think that we're lucky enough to be able to place lots of bets and keep an eye on kind of where sentiment's going.
Yes, that's right. And I've had the opportunity to speak to a couple of other major exchanges too, and they're not doing dissimilar things, investing across the Web3 space, not knowing where it's going to go, but having a spread across the sector so that they are in a position to be part of the next generation of the web. This is so inspiring. Tell me, when you're looking at these investments, do you ever get involved with angel, or do you start at round A? Do you primary co-invest? Do you ever acquire? What sort of things happen there?
The answer is yes to all of those. So it really is on a case by case. So the way one of the great things about an investment from Binance Labs is it's not just cash; it also comes with relationships, connections, and expertise in this space. And it really does depend on what the opportunity is. And so I would be in just this market, I'd be looking at 3-4 opportunities a month. Some months could be 10, other months. And it really does differ. Some are looking for minority investment, majority. Some are looking for complete buyouts. It really does differ. I think one of the great things about being a young company is that we're not tied to kind of the old ways of doing things. So we can be flexible, and that's how we've been successful today. Is we can be flexible and adjust the strategy to the opportunity.
Yeah. So I have one last question from Ben, which you being in the forefront of observing the trends and the participation from the larger masses who are trying to understand the industry and make the right investments and do the right things in terms of figuring this out. What are the long-term goals and vision for Binance Australia, New Zealand, especially in light of evolving regulatory landscape, which is actually a Herculean task, if I can use that term? Can you also provide insights into companies' plan for innovation and staying at the forefront of cryptocurrency industry? Because from my vantage point, the regulatory landscape and innovation are at odds. And how do you balance that? What's the balancing act that Binance Australia New Zealand embarks upon in staying current and at the same time compliant?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of vision, our vision has always been to grow the freedom of money, so to make money more accessible to more people, and that of course is what crypto does. And so that's always been our focus, and so that translates into growth and adoption, which that's growth and adoption is the outcome, but the input needs to be increased confidence, increased trust, which comes through regulation, increased understanding, which comes through education. So regulation is we don't see it as at odds. We see it as a prerequisite, because in order for anything to go mainstream, people need to be able to engage in it in a safe way that they trust. And so how that looks is not yet established with uniformity across the world. We're just at that early stage of each jurisdiction working out what that means locally. So I think there's a long way to go in terms of understanding each jurisdiction and then how those fit together globally in what is, as I said before, international industry. But we don't see that those are at odds. But the regulation has to be fit for purpose, and it has to be flexible enough to accommodate an industry which does change by the day, the week, the month. So that's probably as much as I can say now, because I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. How we look to keep at the forefront of that is, you said it's a Herculean task. We're up for it. We've taken it on, and that means engaging with regulators all around the world who are looking at this, and that's exactly what we do. So, in my part of the world, we have regular meetings, consultations, engagements with policymakers, with regulators, with those industry bodies that influence them, and then you just multiply that by all of the markets around the world that Binance operates in. And we're doing that all the time, because we want to make sure that regulation comes, that it's the right regulation, and that it's in the interests of consumers as well as as well as the traditional industry. I think if I take the current consultation on Treasury as an example, so responding to that consultation, we have our local team, but then we draw on our global resources, our policy team, who are working with regulators in Europe and the Middle East, all around the world, on what their regulations look like, so that we can add some of that experience and some of those thoughts. And that really is the focus at the moment for getting the right kind of regulations up. In terms of how we see the future, we see that crypto adoption will grow to levels in developed countries that it is growing to in developing countries. Once we can get the regulatory settings right, we want to be a big part of that. But what we think, what we see happening right now is the traditional, the banking industry is starting to get into crypto. Having been pretty stridently against it previously, we're seeing big banks all around the world making quite serious investments, either buying their own exchanges or building their own in-house teams and building their own projects, often for institutional customers so far. So I think the industry will look quite different. It'll be a lot more diverse. We'll have input from the traditional banking sector. The question for us is where will we fit in that, and will consumers look to what will then be traditional crypto exchanges, or will they look to their bank, and what role will those two play together? And I think we're only as an industry working that out right now.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that, Ben. I think that's quite comprehensive, and I certainly wish you luck on that front. It's truly a challenging task, and I think you need you certainly have the right mindset for that. So it's great.
Thanks, Nitin. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Ben. It's to be ahead of the regulations is impossible because the regulations have to follow the technology, and the technology is getting developed on a constant basis. So it's likely that we'll see regulations just steadily evolve in each country over the following years as the technology evolves too. And so it's going to be an ongoing discussion. But it's so good to hear a grassroots discussion from yourself about the participation of Binance, both as a citizen in the space, as an educator in the space, and just the enormity of 150 million users. You know, there's very few, if any, exchanges in the world that have got 150 million users in them, traditional or otherwise. So quite extraordinary. Great to see that you engage with Australia in the manner of which you're doing. Look forward to having you on the show again and having a discussion about where the regulations have been implemented in the not too distant future. Thanks very much, Ben.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Love the conversation.
We hope you enjoyed our weekly conversation. If you have any questions, comments, or suggested topics, please contact Nitin, Gaur, or myself on the emails displayed here or via our LinkedIn profiles. Feel free to subscribe and share with like-minded friends. Stay well, inquisitive, and engaged. See you next week.